What we are going to look at now are the different parts of a basic camera and how they operate individually, and for what they are actually used. When we can grasp what each mechanical part does, then you will better understand the effect on the final photograph. So first we're going to look at how the shutter works in a camera, what it does and how we can completely change the way a photograph turns out because of the way that we use the shutter. In much the same way that a window has a shutter that opens and closes to let in the light, so does the shutter in a camera. The shutter operates in a camera by regulating the interval in which the sensor is exposed to incoming light. By using the shutter alone, we can create several different effects in our final photograph. But first, let's look at the mechanics of the shutter. The shutter moves from one side of the camera to the other, much like this. The longer the interval that you have the shutter open, the more light that hits the sensor. To create a correct exposure, you need to regulate the amount of light that falls on the sensor. If we have too much light, our photograph looks too bright or is overexposed. And if we have too little light, it is too dark or it is underexposed. So if we have a shutter that is open for a long interval, obviously the amount of time that the sensor is exposed to light is greater than if the shutter was open for a shorter interval. This interval is known as the shutter speed. If then we are trying to shoot in a situation where the light is very low, perhaps because you're in a dark place, like for instance a cave or even a castle, or nighttime, or it's overcast, then to expose the image correctly we would need to use a shutter that is open for a long interval. That is one that would allow a lot of time for the light to fall on the sensor. Otherwise the image might well be underexposed. But if it was a very bright day or you were on a beach or on a ski slope and the sun was shining, you wouldn't want too much light to hit the sensor, otherwise you might overexpose the image. So you would want the shutter to be open only for a short interval. All cameras have shutters, whether they are compact cameras or DSLRs. The other very important thing to understand about shutter speeds are they are measured in increments of a split second. For instance, when you look at the display for shutter speeds on your viewfinder or on your review panel at the back of the camera, you will see a number going anywhere from 30 seconds to as fast as 1/8000th of a second. So a fast shutter speed is infinitely quicker than when I do this, and a slow shutter speed would record me doing this from now until now. So what visual effects do you think are controlled by using the shutter appropriately? If you said motion blur or stillness in a photograph, then you would be 100% correct. As you just saw, a slow shutter will capture each point of light reflected from an object that is in motion over a period of time. But because the object is moving, you will find a trail of light markings in your photograph. Slow shutter speeds and fast-moving objects can create fantastic effects that enhance your photograph with a feeling of energy and beauty. If you wish to record the strain on an athlete's face as they run a 100-metre race or even the individual droplets in a stream of water, using a fast shutter speed is imperative. If the shutter opens and closes very quickly, it's more likely to create an image which is frozen in time. An object that is moving very quickly can be frozen, as the shutter only allows for a split second in which the light that is reflected from the object is captured, often creating very dramatic action shots. So the rule of thumb is that slow shutter speeds have longer periods where the sensor is exposed to light, so is ideal to use in low light situations or creating motion blur. Fast shutter speeds have less time exposing the sensor to light and are ideal for bright situations and creating moving objects frozen in time. In the next lesson, we will look at what an aperture does and what effects it creates.